So welcome to all of you, and I'm so glad we're going to be able to talk about probably the most important thing on people's minds right now, which is food and food security. And there are so many questions that people have about that, and so I'm looking forward to answering them. So let me start perhaps with a question that I'll be able to ask Juan and David. And that's that so many children in our community receive free and reduced lunches, and that's not now possible in the schools. So are your two organizations working to make sure that children who receive those meals are fed? Perhaps I'll start with you, Juan.
Yes, Steve. At Catholic Charities, about half of the individuals that come to our food distributions are families, many of them immigrant families. So that's a big focus of our agency to address individuals.
So you said many of them immigrant families. Your sound dropped out for a second.
Correct. Many of them are immigrant families. The other significant population are seniors. So it's those two large populations. And but children in particular, kind of for us, they're the future, and we want to make sure that we provide as many resources as possible through food distributions and benefit enrollment.
Okay, so David, so families that are used to getting their food, especially for the children in schools, is Redwood Empire Food Bank reaching out to those families to let them know that they can have meals that you will help provide, or are there other resources in the community that are doing that?
Well, there are many resources that exist throughout our community for people seeking food, specifically around children who would otherwise be eating at school. The Department of Education has allowed schools to enact their summer feeding program now, when normally school would be in session. And so children are now able to come in a drive-through distribution setup where they can actually come in a vehicle, not stop and eat, which is normally what is required, and pick up their meals and go. And in fact, even better than what I just described is the children don't even need to be present, which is really lovely. So if children are sleeping or they have, some sort of daycare, that they're not required to be present.
Right. I read initially that food would not be distributed unless children were actually in the cars, and that's no longer true.
That is no longer true. That was the original way in which it was launched, but then they corrected that.
Okay. And for both Juan and David, is it easy enough for a family, wherever they live in the county and even in the Bay Area, but especially in Sonoma County, to find these resources and to connect with them? Perhaps I'll ask you, Juan, first.
Yes, we work very closely with Redwood Empire Food Bank, and they have an excellent website where they track all existing food distribution. So we often refer individuals to that website and their Food Connections desk. 211 does an excellent job of connecting individuals as well. And our front desk, Griselda, who is bilingual and can connect individuals very easily to our distributions and direct them as needed. We also have resource connectors on call to screen individuals for CalFresh. CalFresh is a huge benefit right now for our community, similar to unemployment. When people are in need, they can apply for that service, get some supplemental income for their families, and support the local economy at our local stores.
That's great. So we're going to be putting some of those resources up on the screen as we talk, and I think that'll be very helpful. Now, Eric, we're starting to see in some of the food establishments, these sort of plexiglass barriers that separate the customers from the cashiers and the checkers. What do you think about that as a solution for these days when people are afraid of getting too close to someone who might be checking, say, their food in the aisle?
So what's reality and what's perception aren't always the same. But I will say with the plexiglass, we did install plexiglass a week or two ago, and many stores have. And it certainly gives the employee a sense that there's some division between them and the customer. And even if it helps a little bit, that's a move in the right direction. So I absolutely support the plexiglass. I think it's made life for my cashiers a little bit easier, because it's not so much the employees that don't understand the social distancing. It's so many different customers, so many different attitudes to what's going on, and not all of us think the same way. And so some people are more aware of social distancing, and some people need a few reminders.
Okay, thanks so much, Eric. Now, Juan, there's a question I know I read in the New York Times the other day that some places that were offering food were essentially overrun, that there were lines for what I read were sometimes miles of cars waiting to come into places where folks could get food, where they could get groceries to stock up. What are you hearing from your community about whether or not they can get what they need in terms of food when they go out to seek it?
So, Steve, at Catholic Charities, we work not only here in Sonoma County, but our surrounding counties as well. And overwhelmingly, the need is increasing day to day. As more information comes out, more restrictions, people are losing their jobs. The need is increasing. At our agency, we focus on increasing capacity at our existing distributions, and have even added one at our main office on Airway Drive. And there's multiple locations where we're looking at expanding and adding the frequency of distributions. Luckily, we have an awesome team that has what they do. We try to prepare the bags of food as early as possible. As soon as the truck drops off the food, we have a whole team assembles everything, and the interaction with the participant is minimal. So the lines have actually been very manageable. We've had our plan B to ask for support for local law enforcement to direct traffic, but at this moment we've been able to prepare those bags quickly enough and get participants out. So we haven't had that issue just yet. As we move forward, that might change. So we are adjusting as needed.
Okay, and Juan, I have a particular curiosity and concern for some of the undocumented members of our community, where these are the people who won't be getting that money from the government, the $1,200 that so many others are getting, that may not have the money in the bank, that may be the first to lose their jobs in agriculture or in landscaping or in many of the food industries, in others. Are you particularly hearing from the undocumented community that they're able to source the food that they need for their families?
This population is a huge concern for our agency. Out in the community, we're known for two main service areas. One is our housing and shelter, and the other is for our immigration services. While we're not a food bank like the Redwood Empire Food Bank, throughout the country, about half of the participants that come to our agency for help is for food. So that need is very apparent. It's there. And with all these different resources that are out in the community, most of them are not open to this population. In the past, from our fires that we've experienced in the past, it's been very regional, and there's been funding that has been coming to our area, and we could address some of those needs. Today, it's a very different world. It's affecting the entire state, the entire country, the entire world. So funding is very limited. Our agency does provide client assistance, but at this moment, it's very challenging because it's very limited.
Okay, David, let me ask you, I imagine somehow that you are a numbers guy. Are there any numbers that you can share with us of the amounts of foods and the things that you're doing now that are ramping up, that are very different from what your year ago might have done, or even 6 months ago?
Well, yeah, I could tell you it's different than 2 weeks ago.
All right, please.
I mean, the numbers, they don't all add up to one big number. There are different metrics that we can use, okay? So here at the Redwood Empire Food Bank, we do emergency food boxes. We're one location of many throughout the county where people can collect emergency food boxes. Prior to COVID-19, in a given month, we would distribute 125 boxes during a month. And now, just last Friday, we did 275 boxes in one day. Pretty big change. Over on Stony Point Road, we have Resurrection Church, where we host a food distribution, and we would normally do approximately 150 households would come through a food distribution, 150 households. Last week, we did a distribution, it was 509. On any given month, these boxes I'm talking about, in total, we would pack approximately 1,250 boxes. We're now packing 7,250 boxes in a day. Now, those aren't all being distributed. We're building as fast as we can because we know that this is a tsunami that is yet to hit. That we're at the stage of the game right now where the ocean has receded. We're all staring at a bunch of sand going, wow, that's amazing. I've never seen anything like that before. And there's a wall of water coming towards us that is something that we've never experienced other than the Great Depression.
That's very sobering, and thank you for that. Eric, we also have gotten many questions into us about, how people should be handling the food once they get home. Can they be assured that their food is safe, that what they're bringing into their homes can be eaten without any danger of virus? How do you think about that as the general manager of Oliver's?
I try to be very realistic about it. The idea that I could guarantee that there's never going to be any risk on the food that they receive from any grocery store, frankly, at any time ever, is just not realistic. General health and safety practices are wise. Wash your produce, cook your produce. Make sure that when you get home, when you have a bag of groceries, as you're unloading it, hopefully with some gloves on, just wipe it down, spray it with some light, the cans, the boxes, those are easily sprayed down with Lysol before it ever touches your counter. And I think if you practice those measures, you would be reasonably safe.
Okay, I've heard that there are some people who kind of break their counters up into two different areas. So they bring the food, they put it on the kind of dirty, quote unquote, part of the counter. They unpack the food carefully, as you say, with the gloves and wiping it off. Then they remove those packages and wipe that area down. And so the counter then becomes clean all the way around. Are you recommending anything like that kind of routine?
Whatever makes people comfortable. Certainly, I would think that it would make more sense to have a clean surface. And as you remove it from the bag, that you're wiping it down and setting it on a clean surface. That's way it's clean before it ever touches the surface.
Right.
And then it goes from a clean surface to probably your cupboard. And there's going to be just less chance of any cross-contamination there.
Okay. Let me end by asking each of you, and you're just all three of you right in the middle of this incredible challenging time, what your biggest challenge is, what your biggest worry is, and the problem that you're working hardest to try to figure out just right today. And maybe I'll start with you, David. What keeps you up at night, and what are you worrying about?
COVID-19. that is such an enormous question, Steve. That is, it is.
But you come to work every day, and you really have to do something about it.
Yeah, we're doing it, but it is the magnitude, the complexity, the biggest issue that's confronting us is actually safe distancing. That jams up the entire supply chain, from receiving food, to preparing food, to boxing food, to having volunteers come. We're an organization of 60 staff, and we're 8,500 volunteers. So if you were to imagine that under normal times, we would have 200 volunteers come on a super Saturday where they pack boxes, and they could be shoulder to shoulder. Well, and they may be in 150 feet on each side of a production line. And now we have 6 volunteers that take up 36 feet, 12 volunteers that take up 72 feet. So, and so we have remote locations that we are now packing boxes because we can't have them in our facility. And when they're packing the boxes, all of our distributions are converting to drive-through. So instead of people getting out of their vehicles or walking to the distribution, we're requiring that they drive. So the whole construct is different. So it is such an enormous question. We're up to the challenge, but every day, it's not that it's a new deal. Every day they add another deck to the game. And so we're playing off of 15 decks of cards right now, all at the same time.
All right, let me ask you that same question, Eric. What do you find is your biggest challenge right now to get the food into your stores and out to your customers?
So, there's a few things that could be perceived as big challenges, like the supply chain. But to be honest, my main concern is for my staff. That is what keeps me up at night. There is this message out there that food workers, grocery workers are essential workers. They're frontline workers. But with that, little things like we were supplying our team with gloves. I got a call from a supplier the other week that said, we can't give you gloves anymore. We have to give them to essential workers. I'm going, really? That doesn't make sense. And then, well, our manufacturer cut us and they're sending them right to hospitals, which is great. And no problem with sending them to the hospitals. They should. But when you talk about the safety and security of the team, we're not a group of people who have been trained on how to handle situations like that. And fear is rampant throughout the grocery industry. And I will say that the majority of the customers, the vast majority of the customers are wonderful, understanding, thankful. They pay attention to their distancing. But there are some that just make things a little more challenging for the team. And when you think about a grocery worker, a cashier that spends 8 hours in a check stand is going to encounter more people that could possibly infected by COVID than the average person would in a week or two. And so just the risk that's there for them is major on my concerns right now.
Okay, how do you reassure them? Well, what do you tend to say in your regular messages to the employees?
The messages evolve daily. First and foremost, it's taking in information that concerns them, so we can really think about it and try to come up with solutions to their concerns. Masks and gloves are 2 things. So we have enough gloves. Everyone's required to wear gloves on the front end and in the perishable departments. But like I said earlier, we don't have enough masks available yet. And so we have them for those who really want them, but before we can mandate you must wear a mask at work. And then we're constantly reviewing with other partners in the retail industry what they're doing, what their common practices are that makes sense that we could apply to help assure our team that we're doing everything we can to keep them safe.
Okay, and finally, Juan, I'm very curious to know kind of the same question. What keeps you up at night? What's your biggest challenge? What are you trying to accomplish now day to day that you get started with right when you come in the morning?
So the day-to-day in the moment right now, what's in my mind is securing funding to expand our resources. Like David mentioned, the numbers are increasing, so we need to keep up with that demand. Kind of the flow of the distributions. Now we pre-package everything, so just having enough bags to prepare those, or boxes, or whatever we can get a hold of. That's what keeps me up today. But once we address that, what actually bothers me and kind of keeps me up at night is the long-term impact economically that this pandemic is going to cause. For us at Catholic Charities, food is the first indicator, is the kind of the canary in the mine that it's the first thing that people feel comfortable asking for assistance. But what comes next is even more difficult. Rental assistance, utility assistance, transportation. Many of our clients don't have vehicles, so doing a drive-through distribution is a challenge to start out with. From our experience during disaster case management from our fires, we have case managers that are still kind of wrapping up some 2017 fire survivors, and it takes a long time to recover. And then we have had several others around our surrounding counties. The impact economically is going to be significant, and the resources are going to be a little bit tighter. So that's what keeps me up at night, Steve.
Okay, well, gentlemen, I really thank you for joining me today. Juan Torres, Assistant Director of Community Connections at Catholic Charities, Eric Meuse, General Manager of Oliver's Market, and David Goodman, the CEO of the Redwood Empire Food Bank. Thanks so much for talking about this really crucial issue, and I appreciate the work you're all doing.
You're welcome.
Thanks for having us, Steve.
Thank you, everyone.
So I know you guys are very busy. I'll let you get back to work. And
Actually,
thank you.
Eric. Hey, Eric, before you hang up, I could have taken all of your answers and rolled them up into my answer. So it's really interesting, though, that it's compelling the sort of the front line, the essential workers, and we are just like you, where
Right.
we are feeling like, hey, man, we're out in the front line. You know, we're meeting thousands and thousands of people, and you know, it is just, you're just naked out there, and you know, that how to get people to feel comfortable, and that whatever that speech looks like, where you say, you know, who are you? It's up to you, because they don't have to be here. Unlike firefighters and police, they're not paid. They don't have to show up. I mean, economically, they might have to show up, but
Right.
they're not obligated by some contract. And so now you just end up appealing to, once you get beyond the economic part of it, just when you punch through this thing and you look back, who do you want to be? Who do you want to say you were? Were you fight or flight? And it's...
Yeah, they're certainly looking in the mirror. The economic reality of it, as you're talking about, David, is that most of the people that we employ here in the stores, you know, they're living paycheck to paycheck at best.
Of course.
And as soon as they get a little too scared and have to leave, if they don't have the resources to put food on the table and pay their rent and take care of their kids, so they're really stuck between this rock and a hard place with, I'm terrified what could happen to me, but do I have a choice? And that's, you know, we got our entire buying team trying to source these things like masks and plexiglass and gloves and all that. So anything we can do to support you guys, please let us know.
Well, you know, my brother, I mean, it's just tragic. You know, my brother imported 500 masks. You talked about your 500 masks or whatever. He imported 500 from Hong Kong just because my family members were worried about me. I think he paid $5 a pop for them. You know, just like, and you know, and of course, it's not like you're going to wear one all day long. I keep telling people, it's like, for two things about the mask. One, it's like a vacuum filter. You know, we've all not had an extra spare one. And you start running the vacuum and blowing dust all over the place because it's not doing any good anymore. And the second thing is, so I've been telling all my colleagues, keep your hand, they're starting to quote, like make a list of my quotes, keep your hands out of the holes in your face. That's the thing. And the problem with the masks is that then people start touching their face all the time.
Yes.
So yeah, they're great. And, you know, they keep someone from either getting stuff on someone else or breathing it in, but your hands are probably the most prime conduit, and now they're in your face all the time. So, you know, a dirty mask, hands on the face, you know, whatever. But I echo everything, Juan, everything you said. I mean, it's just like, it's all one big answer.
Yeah, we're on the same boat. The challenges that we're all seeing, they're not unique. We're all seeing it. And the other thing is, you know, when you build a team, everyone feels comfortable being around each other. That's the big challenge.
Yeah, that's true.
That's like the actual physical distancing.
Yeah, the first week of the physical distancing, we had a lot of reminders on no hugs, no handshakes.
Oh, yeah. All right, you guys.